Hello, my name is Ron Malone. I will be doing a demo for the next 1 hour, and the subject I'm using is my neighbor. Her name is Carol Zimmerman, and one day while I was out checking out the chicken coop, which my wife and Carol have in support of producing eggs, Carol was there, and it was a bright sunny day. So I took a photograph of Carol and actually took two or three or four um, with the purpose of having this subject as a demo illustration. And also I've used it in a couple of workshops. And I took a picture of her with very little sun and poor shadowing to illustrate the importance of when you are looking for values and you have to create paintings. Values are extremely important. Matter of fact, it's secondary to the color you use compared to the importance of what it'll do to your painting. So the first example I'm going to show you is the photo I took, and you can see this photo is not, not very good. Even if you use a Notonizer app, it's still, you can see the values aren't there. So if I were to go to paint this, it would be very difficult to paint and get it to look like it's real, or get it to look like there's shapes and etc. The second photo I'm going to show you is one I took later, and I asked her to move out into the sun, and I was real careful about where the shadows fell. As you can see, there's some nice values, the shadows. So if you look close, you can see how the light and the shadows really create the nice lines. Look at this line here. Look at her right cheek. This shadow on her nose. All of those form shapes, and those shapes are important because I paint shapes. But if you focus in on just really looking at those shapes and really working hard to get those right, I go from this photograph and I project it onto my watercolor paper. And what I look for is all of those lines, particularly the shapes, because I want to make those shapes interesting. They can't just be a copy of this. If you want to do that, I really encourage you to go get a photograph and do photography, because it does a much better job of copying. But where I get my expression is what shapes I choose, how I approach those shapes. I don't put in all those details. I put enough shape, and you can see I selected quite a few different shapes, but still, probably not even a third of all the shapes that are on the photograph. So what I'm looking for are the shapes that will define her, the shapes that will define her expression. You see the slight smile, the twinkle in her eye I thought was cool, and the way she's tilted her head. This, if you know Carol, this is Carol. That's the look she gives you. She's happy. We're using Winsor Newton watercolor paint, and I use the professional series, all transparent, pretty much, except for there are a couple minor exceptions. And when I need some opaqueness or cover up at the end, I'll use that opaque version. I also am working on cold press, and you can see it's Arches cold press. The brushes I use, they're not cheap. I use the Raphael and Kolinsky brushes. I bought one of these 4 years ago at Florida Watercolor Society convention, and since then I've gone through other brands I won't mention, and they seem to last. The best I can do is maybe get 6 months or a year out of one. This one I still have, and it's still the same shape, except where I think somebody might shoot the edge off here, but except it's still in great shape. So I'm going to mix up some color. This will be just the lightest value I use on the face. It will tend to be a slight orangey color. What I'm trying to do is pick up the fact that she is in a bright sun. I don't always do that, but in this case, the setting lends itself quite well. And so this will be the lightest. A couple areas I will resist. I'll try not to paint, since there's no flesh on the eyeballs. I'll stay away from that, and the hair and the clothes. And I'll try to leave room for some white in her teeth. I don't want it to have those colors either. And I'm just doing a very light wash. I hope you can see that pretty well. I'm looking at my monitor. Looks like there's a couple little reflections, but that's not a big deal. And I'm actually going to start at the top, because up here tends to be a slight yellow. I can capture that. And this will be the lightest color. Always keep in mind, as you do this, you all know that watercolors tends to dry lighter. So I'm just putting a nice consistent wash, and I am going to poke some white through on the glasses. I'll leave a couple of spots of white there, and I will put a little rose color in her nose and things like that. You can see that's a little rosy, just a barely a little bit. This is just, it sets you up for the colors that you're going to be using. And sometimes this is a color that's going to be shining through, so you want to get it close to being right. And I'll get it close to right. And I'm going to lift part of that nose a little bit. I just wanted, you can always make it darker later on, but it's pretty hard to make it lighter. You guys already know all that. So I've put in some variations of colors here and there. Just to set me up for a successful painting, I hope. And this is pretty wet. And I'll probably fast forward through some of this for you. Over here is very light. That side of her. And then there's some. And we'll still try. I can kind of rub down some areas. The ears tend to be pinkish because they're you can see through the skin. I find they be a little bit pinkish because of the blood. Most of this color you won't really see, but it'll be a setup a little bit. And then I'm going to come through with a little finer brush, because I don't want to get any color near those eyes and the highlights there. That eyeball's way up there. And I'm going to leave some room on the frame to let, when I drew this, traced it from the photograph. Some codes I use, I will mark areas that I want to keep pretty light I'm marking with an X. I don't know if you can see those. You probably can. I'm marking with an X. See, I left a little white come through. It's probably not a big deal, but if I don't do it now, I won't have the option later. I guess I have and could come back with some opaque white. I don't like using white. It just doesn't look the same as when you let the paper show through. There's a difference, and you can see that difference in the strokes. And then there's a couple of spots here that there's some hair down here. I'll just capture that while I got the yellow out, and the hair that's over here. Since my brush is already wet, I'll just use this big, small brush. And I like also, I use silver brushes, and I don't know what this one is. It's wore out. Here's one that lasts. These I found out I can probably get about half a year out of them. I'm not really nice to brushes. Okay, so you can see I've already set up some tones. This will be the lightest tone that we'll see, except for the whites that are showing through. So I go ahead and put in all those tones, and I'm going to go ahead and put a light tone in for her shirt. And the reason for that, I'm using a little bit of the turquoise and cobalt blue, not cobalt. I have to remind myself which one it is. Oh, it's Persian blue. Should have known. Persian blue is very intense. But I have just a little turquoise and Persian blue, and I'm just going to set up the lights, the lightest value that I will use for her shirt. It's a t-shirt, and some of that white show through there, and as I get over, it's pretty light over on this side, so I'm just going to do that kind of light. As light as I can get it. Okay. So basically, I'm setting myself up hopefully for easy painting. The other thing I find is once you get some color on there, it's easier to lift off the next layer if there's something already there. It's not a huge difference, but there is a big difference between lifting off of the paint that's on the paper directly, and if you have, I guess to me it's kind of like a little bit of a seal. It helps seal that paper and does give at least one layer where it doesn't quite penetrate, because you want the transparent paints to lay on top. So it looks pretty good. I'm looking at the monitor. This looks a little bit darker right through here, and that's okay. The nose is okay, so it's all right. It's nothing too intense that I can't recover from. So now I'm going to start laying in some of the next layer. And I'm going to try the pins on some of the detail. I'm just curious whether Okay, I think I'm about done. This is the finished product clothes. I still have a little work to do in the hair, a couple areas I want to lighten up. But generally speaking, then fix this little area. And put this over top. See if that helps the looks of it. Yeah, a little bit. It gives you an idea. And I'll, some of these are a little bit too light up here. But I hope what you saw is what you saw was painting shapes and making all those shapes interesting. And when I painted, I really focused in on all these shapes. This shape of this shadow is really important, and these shadows, the shadows over here, makes the thing pop. And then you put it on a dark background with something that's bright, that contrasts, and of course, blue, a dark blue against this kind of yellow and orangey red really makes that thing pop. So that's what we ended up doing, and here's what the original painting we worked with. So so there are some similarities, I hope. But anyway, that's my approach. Do you have any questions?